super freaking late because the race ended like 7 hours ago because it's not late for Supercross. It's not at night. It's not late. And no, I did not have Costco cookies. I had to go to Fry's first and get these duo double half mixed Oreo, and they're not that good. They're not the crack that Costco has, so don't go there. Go to Costco cookies. But I digress already. I just wanted to get some of my thoughts out there before the week starts. I hope everybody's having a marvelous Memorial Day. Make sure that you go say thank you to this country, and also just be around your family, do everything. Hey, yeah, in the chat already saying prop. Honestly, at first, I was a little bit like, oh, the 250 class is going to have, because there's, like, nobody in the 450 class. And truthfully, jump into the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to talk about is factory Honda HRC. Nobody wants to be number 2. I've talked about it with Star Yamaha, with the Dylan Ferrandis and Tomac scenario. Now you have the KTM scenario with Cooper Webb and Aaron Plessinger racing, and I really think Coop is, maybe there's some dollars behind why he's already back. The broadcast made it seem like it was this magical thing that his concussion in 3-4 weeks, when typically that's on the podium how he wanted to. Oh, sorry, you guys can't hear anything I'm freaking saying. You guys can't hear anything I'm saying because, I need to have an editor. This is what happens when you go live, is I had the stupid different transition here. But what I'm talking about is Cooper Webb was literally saying that, hey, I would rather be on the boat right now. Nobody wants to race moto. Really, nobody wants to race moto. It's hard. The motos are long. The travel sucks. And the pay's not as good. Just plain and simple. And you guys are saying you never got to watch the podium press conference. Well, dude, the dynamic... Oh, back to what Coop, right? He says he wants to be on a beach, but then he quickly backtracks on the podium and says, hey, no, actually, I'm really glad to be here. I reached out to Davey Coombs to talk about, like, hey, I believe I speculated that I thought that Tomac was getting some money to potentially race moto, and now that he's not, does somebody else fill? Because as a series, you need to have guys. Just like how World Supercross is paying Ken Roczen so much money to race World Supercross, is you need to have some heavy hitters so that people can buy tickets. Motocross is kind of missing some heavy hitters besides Tomac, really, right? You've got Jet Lawrence, you've got Chase Sexton, which I'll go into because that's the real story here. But I'm speculating, and I got turned down. Davey Coombs instantly said, "No, Johnny, that is false. We're not paying anybody any money for this stuff. We're just happy to have Cooper back." Right? But the question I beg is Coop really happy to be back? We will see in his performance if he's really needs to push through in an area to get a 4th or 5th place. That'll really tell me whether or not he really wants to be back. But if he lets people just kind of buy and he ends up feeling okay with being a 5th place guy, then it tells me, hey, maybe there might be something else going on here, because at the end of the day, these guys are professionals and they need to pay a mortgage and blah, blah, blah. No matter how much you want to race, you know, if you can get a paycheck and just kind of fall in line, you might do that a little bit more is all I'm saying. And I respect Coop, and I really think he's a better Supercross guy than Moto guy. But really, how many MXGP guys and privateers and even 250 guys would be saying, why don't I race 450 motocross right now? Because there's just all the factory guys are hurt, unfortunately. And if I'm just looking at qualifying times, we can literally see that, hey, badass that there are 71 guys to try to qualify. I really think that this number should have been in the 100s. I'm like, where the heck are all the privateers? The privateers need to show up, because this might be the only year where you might be a teeter-totter to get straight into the motos. I'm saying just freaking do it. Pay the extra money. We all know that there's real no money in racing, especially being a privateer, but just do it. Hey, and shout out to Matt on the 252 stroke, he's got a YouTube channel qualifying not too far behind Jeff Walker, who's been training all year long for the Nationals, and he's on a 450, and Matt made it on the YZ 250. Super pumped for him, super pumped. But really, the real storyline is what happened the last few laps on Moto 2 in the 450s, because it was a battle. It was a head game battle between Chase Sexton and Jet Lawrence. Jet Lawrence is the up-and-coming guy. Chase Sexton is the guy. He's 23 years old. You don't have any rider on factory Honda that is in his mid-30s or late 20s. You've got two superstars on that team. Hence why I've broken news about Sexton talking about moving to KTM or something, and why Cooper Webb potentially is thinking about going to Star, whether or not Tomac comes back. And the whole Tomac scenario, Tomac has qualified for the Super Duper Cross, so if he potentially could miraculously do magical stuff and get back on the bike, he could race the LCQs for the playoffs and potentially make another $1 million by winning not World Supercross, the World Championship Super Duper Motocross. It's confusing, but the Monster Million, the big race at the end of the series, that is going to be the Super Motocross Championship finale, which I'm actually excited for. I just kind of want to get through motocross and see how it unfolds, because those races are really going to be really fun to watch. But it would be cool if Tomac came back. I highly doubt he's going to come back. But Jet literally now is qualified to race the 250s and 450s. I'd have to look at the rules. Maybe I can ask Davey if Jet could literally try to race both mains. How crazy would that be for him to win $500,000 for the 250s for the last race of the Super Motocross Championship, and then win $1 million in the 450s? That would be insane. But he's going to look like a sandbagger if he just decides to go down and race 250. He's going to stay in 450. That's what I'd be telling him. Everyone over at Honda's probably telling him the same thing. But I digress. Really, the last few laps, or that whole moto, was a dick measuring contest between HRC Honda. I don't know how else to put it. You've got Sexton that's going, hey, I am the guy to beat. I have always been the fastest guy. And in qualifying, here, I'll show it again. Freaking Jet Lawrence was 2 seconds a lap faster than everybody. He's got a 220 versus a 223. 2.5 seconds. That is freaking huge. That is massive. So it was honestly a giant win for Sexton to only lose by a half a second and the last few laps. But it was honestly potentially in his head. The reason why Sexton has had a hard time and why he didn't win the championship last year is the head games, right? If he had a little bit more mental fortitude and just some experience like Tomac, where a Tomac, maybe even a Webb, a Dungey, they would, hey, this is a massive win. If I lose by 30 seconds, it's about next weekend. It's not about right now, right? You're not as good as your last race, but that's what this industry teaches us, is you're only as good as your last race, whether these guys get new contracts or whatnot, not their future potential. And for that reason, I'm a little nervous for Sexton and huge for Jet, because what Jet said on the podium, he basically was like, oh, I'm super excited to race my teammate. It's all going to be great. But then if you watch what his body language did after the moto, and both bikes were literally right there, he didn't even look at Chase. He just walked around and then went to his own little crew. And then Sexton on the podium essentially just said, hey, I know how to race somebody that has some racecraft when it comes to Cooper Webb and Eli Tomac. I can do this. So this is going to be exciting. And really the 250 class for me was the more fun to watch, because it's just the talent that was there. Because watch, if I go to the qualifying times, look at the qualifying times, 220, 223, 223, 223, as far as the 450 guys. In the 250 class, a good portion of these guys were faster than the 450s, which is nuts. How in the heck is a 250F faster than a 450? If you go to any of your local races or racetracks and you take a stock 250F and then you ride a a 450, you're going to be faster on the 450. But that just tells you how much money is in these 250 bikes. And, my brother and I were talking as we were watching the race about the new race and the new rule in Supercross when it comes to, hey, you can't really sandbag, because if you win the championship, then you only have like 2 other opportunities, and then you instantly have to move up, or there's like a 3-year gap. It's worded a little bit weird, but you're not going to have any more Mike Browns in the 250 class, which is good, because the 250 class really should be the F2 class, and it really should be a stock class, in my opinion, because truthfully, nobody can afford to race a 250, especially a privateer. And I really think a lot of even the factory teams have a hard time with their 250 budgets, because those bikes are built to the hilt, right? It's hard to ride a 450 to its potential besides a few guys. And the 250s, you can really push them. It's like, that's why that 350 is a sweet spot for a lot of people that want to have 450 power, but have a little bit of the 250 action as well. I personally don't like the 350s just because they lack the bottom end. But I'm super pumped with Deegan. Deegan is beating all of, if I'm moving to the 250 class, Deegan is beating all of the Star Yamaha guys, Levi Kitchen and Cooper. Justin Cooper, I really felt that dude has a massive opportunity again to not be the bridesmaid. But you saw in the broadcast, they were talking about tires, and I don't know if you saw, but Justin Cooper was cutting off the knobby of his MX tire, where you had a lot of the guys that were running the sand tires of the MX-14, which, guys, if anybody's raced Paula, you know that is a hard-packed track. Why the heck would you put a paddle tire on there? It's going to be hard-packed. It's going to be choppy. It's going to be slippery, because it's usually going to be hot, right? Dry, slippery, choppy, holes, not big bumps, not lots of sand. It just, I thought it was a dumb decision on him to these guys go with the MX-14s. Just completely silly. But truthfully, what is going on in Honda that nobody is really showing you is those guys, Jet and Sexton, I can speculate, don't really like each other. That is going to be the big battle. And Ferrandis, man, looking at him, I thought he was going to be in better shape. A little bit be in better shape. You guys are telling me in the chat that I need to breathe. Yeah, guys, it's 11 o'clock, and I'm all hopped up on these shitty cookies here, right? But I just wanted to get some of my thoughts out here and move on with it, right? But Dylan, he was my pick to win, and he went 3-3. Good for him. He's the number 1 guy on Star Yamaha, but he looked like he's gained some weight, and not in a Chase Sexton, Jet Lawrence type of way. Look at Jet. His neck looks massive. Throughout Supercross, the guy looks like he's been putting on weight to get ready for the 450s, and you could see how much in his body language crossing the finish line, how pumped he was to win on a 450. And yeah, James even alluded to it about the bonus money with these guys, because I believe it's around like $6,000 moto win. There's not a whole lot of money to be had in motocross unless you're from a big team, a big sponsor. And so Jet has really put the hammer down to tell Sexton, hey, you are no longer the fastest guy out here. You're going to have to use some racecraft in order to beat me, which is going to be interesting to see if he can, in fact, do it. But I was a little bit disappointed to see Dylan look like he's gained a little bit of weight. Yeah, I get having a little bit of extra push, cushion to be able to ride a 450, because I've all told you guys that the real sweet spot for 450 is around 165 to 185, which is right where Jet and Sexton land. And Dylan is a little bit smaller of a dude, but he's definitely put on a little bit more chub, in my opinion, which is interesting to a guy that I thought would have been maybe be in a little bit better shape for the 450 class. So we'll see what happens at Hangtown, but it is not looking good for HRC Honda, at least part of the team, right? The other part on the Lawrence brothers, it's looking really good with Hunter and Jet, because we all knew Jet was going to come out firing. And if you remember, I said Jet was going to win the actual series, but I thought Sexton was going to have the most moto wins. Well, it's looking like the perfect race for Jet is alluding to me being wrong and him potentially. Wouldn't it be crazy if he does his first season and he does the Ricky Carmichael thing where he wins every moto, even though there's going to be 2 less motos because there's only 11 races? Would be absolutely insane. And guys, I will work on some of the stuff because you guys are saying it's hard to hear me a little bit. And I guess if I have to say one more thing about the series, I'm a little bit disappointed in the metal gates. I know it's going to evolve and step up the sport, but coming from somebody that loves 2-strokes and just the history of motocross, like I love the 3 45-minute moto type deal. I know change is really ultimately good for the sport. I just don't like taking away the gate positions with the ruts behind where you have the metal gate. But I do like how the gate is cut a little bit to where it's only one line, where you won't have riders having to be cocked on the side where we see in Supercross because it's a total grid. They won't be able to set the bikes off at an angle. They have to stay straight. And so if the rut in front of them is totally cockeyed, they can't set the bike a couple inches over or be sideways. It's going to add a variable that makes it a little bit more difficult for these guys. But at the same time, a little bit bummed. I still think that, hey, potentially lowering the motos to 3 20-minute motos would make it a little bit more interesting as far as viewership goes, because 4 hours is a lot for coverage. It's just a lot. Hey, you guys are saying, Sylvian, welcome from Canada. Appreciate you watching. Guys, I've got some good videos coming this week. I'm still going to be doing the analyticals when it comes to the crashes and the good lines. I saw some good stuff on there. But back to my point, I just think 4 hours of coverage is a lot to try to get new viewers into it. If you switch it up to less filler stuff, because there's only a 35-minute moto per hour of coverage, right? Could we have a little bit less of the middle ground stuff, commercials, etc.? And since it's on Peacock anyway, and just potentially eventually change the sport a little bit to having the stock class and then having potentially 3 moto format of 3 20-minute motos, and you could have a little bit closer racing. I know this race was a little bit weird because ironically at the end of pretty much every moto there's a battle, which is nice, right? But we'll see what happens as the series progresses. I just want to figure out how you could potentially make the racing action continuous and to where the points gap doesn't become so large that nobody wants to stay with viewership. But I know you guys are going off on some questions here. But hey, appreciate everybody staying up till like midnight to listen to this SOB talk about the race. But hey, appreciate all of you. Hey, you guys know what time it is. At the end, you got a whoa, 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 ah. My voice is going out here.